Welcome to the Will Reads Does Cosmere and Mistborn, to be more exact, because we're not going to talk about the whole Cosmere tonight. We're just talking about Mistborn. So, welcome everyone who's listening to us, watching us live, listening live. I just put a little note down here at the bottom. Please keep comments spoiler free through Mistborn Era 1, the first 3 books there. I think Chris is moving on to Era 2 soon, if not already, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But we'll just keep it there for this show for comments. Obviously, if you guys want to, you can always go to Discord and DM me there if you want to have more swirly questions or want to talk about anything there that Chris might not be privy to, or don't want to spoil it. You don't want to spoil Chris, so yeah, exactly. So so before we get going, I mean, you're not necessarily brand new to Sanderson. You started out with this YA stuff, which I've not read. The Skyward, I think, is it?
Yes, Skyward was phenomenal. So I started out with Skyward, and we had oh my goodness, I feel like it's been forever since I've listened because I was not reading. I'll be fair and say I have not physically picked up the book, and I probably should. But that particular series was highly interesting, and there's still more to come on it. So, like, I'm excited for that. But it's the Cytonic series, and it is young adult. It's a very quick, easy read. It's very much geared towards youth and being friendly. So I did like that. It's something that I would, tell my nephews to read, or tell somebody who wants to get their younger children into that realm to go ahead and throw them into. The plot is really, really well set up. The world building's really good, but you don't feel like you're getting inundated. So it's a nice soft entry. And then I was like, well, if he did this good with a young adult, what should I read next?
Sure. Oh yeah, definitely. In my background, I am not 100% caught up on all the Cosmere stuff. So as far as what I've read all of the main works of Mistborn, both Era 1, Era 2, up until where we are. Obviously, the fourth installment of Mistborn Era 2, I think, comes out in November, is what I've seen.
That's what I keep hearing.
Unless they push that back. And then I'm caught up on Stormlight Archive as far as the main series as well. Currently reading Arcanium Unbounded, which is kind of the if for guys that have not read that before, it is a conglomerate of novellas that kind of take place in a lot of the different parts of the Cosmere, and kind of fill in a little bit of the gaps here and there with little short stories. So I'm in the middle of reading that. Have not done Warbreaker, have not done Elantris. So those are the only 2 books in the Cosmere that I've not read yet. At least I think. There might be some more out there that I don't know about, but and then I haven't finished Arcadium Unbounded yet. So that's where I am. So I am somewhat more versed in this world than Chris is, but not 100%, done at all with it. And I'm still intrigued and still reading through it as well. So we'll continue probably to do more of these little Cosmere things, because it looks like, next year's going to be the year of Brandon Sanderson. I mean,
goodness.
It's looking that way.
Dana Luhu, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in real quick. We are going up through Era 1. I have listened to all of Era 1, and that is it.
Yeah. So at the beginning, I'll put a banner out there that keep comments spoiler free. Not past Mistborn Era 1. So
I think you're absolutely right with it being the year. Didn't you just share with me, like, we're looking at getting an actual show for Mistborn? Like, I think that.
Yeah, so that's the rumor. I mean, not the rumor. Brandon Sanderson said that the other night, and I'm actually, if I can share my screen later, we're gonna transition and talk a little bit about that later in this program, and what Brandon actually had to say about some of that stuff. But so that's one thing that's coming next year. Then he, of course, has his 5 secret novels that he wrote during COVID that are coming out sometime next year. Mistborn, Era 2 number 4 comes out in November. Hopefully the next Stormlight comes out sometime 2023. That's what everyone's kind of predicting. So so that's kind of where we where we are with Sanderson and what's going on in his world, which is a lot. I mean, the guy's a machine and writes books like you wouldn't believe.
And I'm gonna be honest with you. You told me 2 years ago to get into Sanderson to, help with my desire to like have something else to read and or listen to while going through Wheel of Time because of our pace.
Mhm.
And prior to you telling me that, I had seen Sanderson's books on the shelves, but in my mind, I was like, if this man is churning out this many books, they can't be that good. I have and I feel horrible because I read Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, who did a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and I mean I read over 60 books, I believe
Mhm.
60 that they wrote,
Yeah.
at least 40, and they were all really good. And they even used a lot of the same characters and just like bridged and opened and elaborated. And I was like, this one person cannot have written so many books instead of such a short amount of time
And
and
they're
done a good
books.
job.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're books.
And so when I looked at it, I was like, oh, he's probably garbage. And I 100% regret that thought, because who knows where I would be at today in my readership and in my fandom. Because I'll
Mhm.
tell you, like I said, Cytonic, again, you told me go straight for Era 1. And I
Mhm.
said, yeah, okay, but I kind of want to bridge outside of magic, so I'll try this little sci-fi thing here. And
Mhm.
you mentioned he's like he does write sci-fi and he writes. I was like, all right, well, I'll give sci-fi a try, just something different. And
Sure.
to follow Spencer in the world of the Cytonic, the Skyward books, to follow her through her journey and to learn about this group of humans that were like essentially trapped on a planet by some unknown force, and then to discover what the force is and discover the history behind the force and then discover the driving force behind the force. And I'm like, this dude built a hell of a world for young adults to really dive into. So
Mhm.
what am I missing? So that's when I hit you back up. I'm like, all right, what did you tell me to read? So
Yeah.
Mistborn. God, when
Mistborn.
I I'm excited. I think, and Chanel's actually going to start Mistborn soon. On
Okay.
top of, I think she's on book 8 or 9 right now
Okay.
for um the
The Wheel of
Wheel of
Time.
Time. Yeah, I think she's at the end of book 8, or she might be in, like, she's not telling me anymore, and I'm not
Yeah.
looking. Because we're at a point where, like, I walk in the door and I'm like, I'm home, I'm home. And I have to start yelling repeatedly so that she cuts off where she's at. And so every now and then I get a snippet of, so I said this and da 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 da. I'm like, no, 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 no. So I think I'm gonna get her into Mistborn so that, at least by 4 o'clock she can cut off the Wheel of Time and turn on Mistborn, and we can do that together. If I can get her to get through Era 1, maybe we can do Era 2 together, but we'll see.
Sure.
I think I'm going to consume that too fast.
Yeah. So let's jump right into talking about Mistborn. Mistborn's one of those fun tales. The first era, which is the story of Vin and Ellen and company. Obviously, anybody listening, we are talking about all of Era One. So if you have not finished reading Era One, proceed at your own risk. Feel free to
If you
come back
haven't, go
later.
read. Get off
Yeah,
of here and
yeah.
watch this later.
Read.
Like, there's an
Well,
easy thing.
if someone actually stumbled on this, and before we get into any spoilers, would you recommend it? Well, maybe what would you tell someone who's thinking about?
I am
Um,
flat out telling you again. I will say it again. I am so pissed off at myself for not having taken Alan up on his advice in the beginning, because he literally told Ian and I both, if you guys get bored, just pick up Sanderson.
yeah,
Because that's where I'm at. I'll be honest and candid, because this is, a safe space. The pace that we're going with the Wheel of Time, I have to really hold myself back, and I have to almost forget about it until the
sure,
last minute. That way I can enjoy it.
right,
But had I started this,
yeah,
I probably would be like caught. I'm not gonna say caught up to you, but I would
yeah.
definitely be in the mix big time, because I have thoroughly enjoyed reading all of it.
Yeah, it's fun. So now that we're getting to spoiler territory, I don't want to talk about the characters too much yet. I wanted to start with probably one of the most fascinating things I think is in Mistborn is the magic system.
Oh my
It is
gosh.
it is one of the most unique magic systems I've ever read. And just really well thought out and well developed. So I want to get your thoughts on it. What's your thoughts of Allomancy and Hemalurgy and of course the Terracemen have their own Fermiology, I think is what's called. But yeah,
Yeah.
they have all their different types of magic systems, but it's all based around metals are blood. If you talk about Hemalurgy, but yeah. So what's your thoughts on the magic system as a whole?
Brilliant. I really thought that it was quite genius the way he had the allomancy, the ferrochemic. I can never say it.
Fair Kim, yeah,
Ferrochemy,
yeah, fair
and
Kim,
then the either way,
yeah,
the fact that he found a way, the Lord Ruler found a way essentially to use metals and to manipulate the powers of a god.
hmm
I mean, we know at this point that all the powers that they're using came from the two different gods. And so the
hmm
fact that they're essentially using the essence of the gods in
right,
different ways was super cool. And the idea of like the humans being able, and the Terracemen are technically humans, but one subset of humans, because we know they're all changed in different ways. Like it blows my mind the depth that Sanderson went into, because the
sure,
humans, the ska, are different from the lords, which are different from the Terracemen, which are different from the other creatures in the book. So they all
right,
use metals in a different way for their power. And then
yeah.
the
What? Yep. Go on. Continue.
no, I was just like that in and of itself was brilliant. So
Right.
I mean, literally the same breed, they all use and draw upon power differently. So then you have humans, which are burning, and which we find out there's a reason behind this at the end. The
hmm
brilliance of perseverance,
Right.
uh,
Trying to fight
trying to
ruin.
fight ruin, and he made and I don't. So he didn't technically make humans able to do what they do. The Lord Ruler did. So the Lord Ruler created his mistings, and then
hmm
ultimately created his Mistborns, which burn metal. Which
hmm
is like, okay, why would you want to burn the source of your power? So with that part of the system, which again I think is super cool. With that part of the system, you have your excuse me, you've got your humans burning metals to use power. So that's allomancy.
hmm
And once they deplete their store, they have to consume more, which kind of talks about that nature of humans we always use to gain.
hmm Right.
And I think that was part of the brilliance that Perseverance had in the battle against Ruin, because Ruin wanted to see things destroyed. So
Right.
it's like, all right, we'll burn the metal. The metal impacts us. We can't see through metal. We can't sense through metal. They have a loose control through metal, but otherwise metal's kind of an enemy. But what Ruin didn't account for was the creation of mistings and mistborns that could literally burn his own body, because his
Right.
own body is metal. And so we know the
Right.
gods are essentially metals, which is like,
Right.
Perseverance, you're a genius. And then you gave this idea to the Lord Ruler, who then
Right.
created these beings that are going to burn through metal.
Yeah, and that's
But
one of the
then,
things. Yeah, and
mhm,
I was gonna say, and that's one of the things I love about it, because in the very beginning, the Lord Ruler is the big bad. And everyone, yeah, and you're saying perseverance, it's preservation, not perseverance,
preservation,
but
I'm sorry.
preservation. Yeah, it's
Wrong
okay.
P word.
Yeah, but yeah, so in the beginning, the Lord Ruler is the big bad, but by the end of the book, you look back and you realize, was he really? I mean, I think he was dealing with the cards that he was got, and I don't think he never necessarily. I mean, you definitely have a different lens about the Lord Ruler towards the end. Like, obviously, he
Yeah.
dies at the end of book one, but he's the big bad all through book one. And then by the end, you're like, I mean, he was just trying to do what he could because he was worried about this bigger bad, which is Ruin, and he just didn't even care about like everyone else at this point.
Exactly.
And, and I mean, yeah, he did power trip of obviously years and years and years of being basically a god. Obviously, gets to his head, and there was an aspect of that as well. But I think initially when he became Lord Ruler, it wasn't necessarily for ill intent.
No, not at all. I think the Lord Ruler definitely had the goal of making sure Ruin did not take over the world.
Right.
And that that in and of itself kind of redeemed him big time for me.
Right. And I mean, it even goes back to, I guess, when the Lord Ruler first became the Lord Ruler and became like basically a god, he accidentally moved, I guess he moved Earth the first time. And that's the reason why he created all the salt, all the mists and all the soot that, the ash and everything like that.
Yeah.
Does to actually temperature control. Because he couldn't move it back. And it was just one of those things where he's like, all right, I'll just put a Band-Aid on it, and that's what we're gonna do.
Well, and Ruin even makes a statement because the first thing Vin did when she became a god, I know we're all over the place, guys.
Yeah.
But the first thing she did, if you don't know, this is our show. But the first thing she did when she became god was she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna plug up the ash mines."
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, that caused an issue. I'm just gonna move the Earth. Oops, I moved it closer and not farther. Oh shit!
Create a giant tidal wave across the entire world. Sweep all the water. He's like, oh crap, I'm screwing everything up.
But and Ruin just kind of laughs and he's like, "Hi, you're the same way the Lord Ruler was when he got these powers. You have no idea what you're doing." Which kind of brings me to the genius of the for alchemy.
Yeah.
Because the ideas of the metals storing, specifically the copper mines, and then going to the idea within Mistborn in general, within that development of the series, the whole thing was that there's the mythology of around the Well of the Ascension and the Keepers and the World Bringers, and the idea that there was going to come a hero who would literally, hold the world on his, like, and the words were so specific. It reminds me of Wheel of Time in that way. Just misinterpreting a word, excuse me, could make or break the mythologies within it. And they're like the hero of ages, plural, not singular, ages not being defined by a past or a present. The fact that they never specified if this hero would be male or female, and then come to find out the hero is technically neither. I don't want to spoil this for anybody, so I'm gonna be as vague as I can.
You can't. We're doing full spoilers here, so it's fine.
Oh man, says it. The fact that he's a eunuch, it was genius. Right. I swear to you. And then the fact, again, going to Fair Alchemy, the fact that he stored the entire history, the entire 1,000 years in the bracers, the copper mines on his arms. And when we get to the end where we have him taking control of both powers of both gods and then essentially becoming God, not like a singular being as God, and then shifting the world back to where it was when they began, when they had green grass and blue skies. And I had one moment in book 2 where I thought, says it's going to be the one. I swear to you, I had that thought, but I let it go because I'm like, he's building Vin up so much. And then it was like, but then Ellen has these great immense powers. Maybe Ellen's the one. Maybe it was they say male, but then they go to female, then they go back to male, and maybe that's it. Maybe Ellen's gonna be the one, or maybe they have a baby, and that's the combination of the two. And I all these thoughts, but I was like, there's not enough time in this book. But the one thing that never came back to me was, it's gonna be Says It. until it was. And
Until
I
it was.
mean, and the fact that he did that in the last chapters of the freaking book,
Yeah.
even says it was like, this doesn't make sense, but it makes perfect
Makes
sense.
sense. Yeah.
I don't want to be God, but here I am. I'm not neither male nor female. I am of the people, but not of the people. He's like, I meet all the criteria.
Yeah.
And I'm questioning religion. Maybe I need to create religion.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to be God. Like, I'm just like mind
Well, then
blown. Like,
there's lots of churches that came up. I mean, like Kelsier, people started almost worshiping
yeah,
the Church of the
the
Survivor or
survivor.
whatever. Yeah. And Kelsier become this almost godlike figure in the minds of people as time goes on.
Now I do have the question. Yeah, I did mean preservation. I'm sorry, Dana. I am reading the chat right along with you.
Okay.
my I wonder, and it's never really talked about, but was Kelsier being controlled or manipulated by Ruin? It's never really talked about, but he did so many things to move Vin into the place that she was in.
He was being contacted by other people, and you learn that later. So I'm not going to get too much into that. He did have talks with other people that are beyond.
Got you.
Beyond this story.
So this is Era 2 conversation then.
And even maybe even more in Cosmere conversation, as a whole.
The term Cosmere means nothing to me at the moment. I'm going to be diving in so much more, and now I'm like, go ahead.
Yeah, so Brandon Sanderson did talk about this in interviews, like especially he talked about it in Arcadium Unbound, which is, like I said, such short stories, and he kind of talks about creating the Cosmere and how he didn't want to just kind of make it a interweaving world, even though they all exist in the same, I guess, galaxy or whatever, all these different worlds and things like that. But he wanted to have main plot lines and then breadcrumbs spread throughout all of them that point to a bigger overarching story that has nothing to do with Mistborn, has nothing to do with Stormlight, has nothing to do with any of these Warbreaker, anything like that. That is just hinted about, that's happening outside of all of this, that kind of ties everything. And eventually, I think things will start to go through. But I said, I don't even know at this point. But that's kind of more of a broader Cosmere conversation. But so going back on rereads, you'll start to pick, if you read, like say Stormlight, you read it, and then you go back and read Mistborn, and you're like, oh, well, I see where that connects there and stuff like that. It's interesting. So as Dana says, Raffo. Yeah.
And then the Hemalurgy.
Yeah.
That was so genius on Ruin's part. And I don't know that the Lord Ruler, again, we know he was like going mad and he had his moments of brilliance. Clearly, you can look at people like says it.
Sure.
And you know what I mean by that, but the idea of manipulating other creatures or beings in this world or creating them, like the Kolosk.
Yeah, the Kolosk
having to combine the body of humans to create a new creature.
Right.
And then no one knowing how it happens, and then human being told by Vin, show me how you're born, and then he just starts slinging dead Kolosk and pulling out their spikes. So she's like, oh, there's spikes, okay. And then he runs to the infirmary and then starts grabbing bodies. I'm like literally, I had to pause. I literally paused because I was driving my car. I was like, I can't listen to this while I'm driving because I don't know how in detail he's about to go with this. Are we gonna see? And it that made perfect sense.
Yeah. So I mean, you have lots of spiked creatures. I mean, you have the Steel Inquisitors, you have the Koloss, you have the constructs, and all of them are constructs or whatever invented using this Hemalurgy. And Contra a little more strange, but it's
true. But I mean, it was genius. I mean, here you had the Lord Ruler taking his own people and going, I'll give you, life beyond life. Like all I need you to do, I'm going to give you immortality. I'm going to even give you your conscious back. I'm going to give you your memories because we're going to need you. The thought, the planning. This man was planning for 1,000 years in the future.
Yeah.
There's no way. He's like, we're going to need you to do some things. We're going to create a contract if you agree. And the fact that they all agreed, I'm sorry, I don't know that I could have been like, yeah, sure. But then again, they probably didn't know what he was going to do to him until it was already done. But to create beings, I kind of think of them as like mucus or jellyfish or something that can like absorb bones or items that are shaped like bones and create a body out of it. And then to go a step further and take actual like remains and then create hair and muscle. And he gave them more than just immortality. He gave them like all of life. They could become whatever they wanted. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah. That could be
the only thing, you can't kill humans.
Yeah, that's the only rule they have.
Kill each other, you can kill Kolos, you can kill, like, you can create if you like. Like, he didn't set those boundaries other than I need you to gather all the metal, and the word won't come to my mind right now.
Allomantic metals.
Yes, but the one specific that was the body of ruin. Atrium. Yes, collect all the atrium. I need it hidden. That is your only task. That is the only thing I ask. And I wonder why these creatures wanted atrium in the very beginning.
Yeah,
when they talked about how much the emphasis on the fact that the original contract that Kelsier had with with not who was it? It wasn't TenSoon that he had it with. It was
no, TenSoon took over. It was Lord Renault.
Yes.
Whoever. Well, I can't remember the name of the Conjure.
The other Conjure. So the fact that he had, like, there was a huge emphasis on it in the very beginning of the book one, which meant that the contract carried over. I'm like, damn, is this like Chandra having to be her servant until she dies? And how much atrium was atrium was it paid? And then why is this important? So that was a question, because you don't talk about them buying things. They don't need to buy things. They can literally take a body and mold anything they want out of it. Like, that was a thought. So that was a huge breadcrumb for me that spoke volumes. So
yeah, definitely. So back to Allomancy and the magic system. I mean, another thing I really enjoy about it is just the whole entire, like, almost polarization, like a positive and negative on magnets. You have all of them are in pairs. And one pulls, one pushes, one rides emotions, one soothes emotions. It's everything kind of has its opposite. And I love how they're all paired like that. Obviously, there's metals that they know about. It's hinted that there might be other metals out there in this, but they don't know what they do, and they don't know what the metals are.
Which means that in Era 2, they've got to start showing up.
Yeah. That maybe. Well, that's something we can speculate. But one thing I did, and I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, but I'm going to try to share my screen. Wait a second. So they did make a beta of a video game, kind of showing steel pushing and things like that.
No way.
And I want to show you what it kind of would have looked like, and I think it's just really done. I'm just going to show a brief clip of it. And see if this works. We're gonna try. So let's go ahead and let's see if this is working. Yep. So we got this. I'm not sure there's gonna be sound for it, but we'll just go ahead and play a little bit. So you have all the lines and everything like that.
Cool.
Of course, this is an early prototype, and then being able to push and pull off the different lines and fly through. Kind of a Mistborn video game if they were to create one. And
Was
So you
this
could
like a fan made thing or?
it was not official production or anything like that, but this is the push and pull it and
Yeah.
see other things and
Dude, that's
how the lines off of
super
you.
cool.
So just kind of a cool thing that someone made. Obviously, not necessarily you know you know I would say
I
fan
am
made, but
all
this is
for this.
making like a early video game, where you could play this, you can see them using the line stuff. So just
This would
something cool.
encourage me.
To play.
If anybody's listening, I will buy a new system
And you
and a
see him
game.
throwing coins or whatever as he's flying
Yeah.
through and stuff. Yeah, so something just cool. I just wanted to show, just kind of showing, I guess, visual of maybe what it would look like from a more visual standpoint. So, anyways, so just wanted to show that for a bit. So leave that, but yeah. So, anyways, just wanted to show that quick clip of the magic system. I thought it was always really cool.
Yeah.
Just a cool little, and it was Osir was the name of the other.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Osir. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Who was eaten by TenSoon.
Yeah. Let me tell you, that was genius. So I had a couple of moments where I was like suspicious of Khandra, period. Now, did I think one Khandra took the place of another Khandra? Not at all. I thought maybe there was some lying going on because I was like, if I got a contract with a man and he dies, what's to say I don't pick up another contract with somebody else? And I'm only bound by the contract. I don't have any real loyalty. Now, I sure did a good job with Vin, and clearly, I don't want to say liked Vin, but respected Vin.
Right.
But there was a thought there, like maybe he picked up another contract with an enemy. But as the book went along, I was like, nope, definitely not. So then to find out when Zane's like, Khandra, come, and he's like, in his will, I can see a dog like with the saddest, like puppy dog, droopy ears, like tail tucked, kind of looking back at you, and then like sulking away. I'm like, no, you gotta be kidding me. And I could feel Vin's emotion and the betrayal, because here's a person who is used to, been trained to, and driven to the point of thinking that everybody is at some point going to turn on her. And she finally got over this. And then the closest, I use the term loosely, closest to her goes to the dark side.
Or was at the dark side all along? I mean, he had contract with Zane. It wasn't with her.
Exactly. So it's like he was part of the dark side, didn't go, but I mean, you could tell he did. He truly fought with it, and then even gave more of himself than he should have, which
he got punished for.
He got punished for it big time. Put in the pits. Was supposed to live out a life as a blob in a pit for the rest of eternity.
Right.
But, and Zane talking about the Hemalurgy. I cannot never say that word. But anyway,
Hemalurgy.
having the spike driven in his chest and not being able to be seen. And I mean, had Vin gotten closer to him, which I kind of was worried was going to happen for a while there, she would have figured out what was going on. But I think even Zane had an awareness, like, this isn't right, and she can do something to help me. That was his big thing. Like, she will be the one to set me free. But the fact that Ruin was always there, just insistently, like...
And always in Vin's head, too, with the earring. At least when she was wearing the earring. Because, I mean, whenever whenever she'd hear her brother talking to her, that was actually Ruin talking to her. And she thought it was, her brother, her mind played tricks on her and remembering these things her brother would say. And it actually was Ruin the entire time, trying to lead her.
I knew for a fact, 100%, that ring was going to be bad news. I had two thoughts. Well, bad for one person or another. I was like, either that earring is going to be a special alloy that she was going to use to get rid of somebody, or that earring was bad news for her.
Yeah.
And the minute it talked about in the book it kind of looking similar to a spike and being silver overcoating
Mm-hmm.
bronze. I was like, oh, she's being controlled by Ruin. Like,
Yeah.
our hero is being manipulated and she doesn't even know it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was genius.
Yeah.
Like the plotting on Ruin's part, I'm gonna have the mother kill the seeker sister
Mm-hmm.
and then call her second daughter the chosen one and give her this
Mm-hmm.
earring. Like, Sanderson, I gotta
Yeah.
give it to him. He really just he thought of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. No, great great writing, definitely, and just the redemption arcs as well. I was going to kind of get into characters as well and just what your overall thoughts of your favorite characters and redemption arcs and things like that. Obviously TenSoon has a great redemption arc, even
Yeah.
though he was kind of forced into his Vin's arc from being a lowly ska to basically
A
becoming one of the
god.
most, yeah, and Sazed being the lowly servant. I mean, the first book, you like when I think I first was like, so you met Sazed yet? And he's like, you mean the servant? Like, yeah, I met him. He's just it's just like this servant dude. Like, I was like,
Yeah, it's
yeah, but
Harrison.
Sazed.
You tried, and I was like, well, this guy's at least sticking around, so he's in for the long haul. But I just like, we have an historian, and
Yeah.
he's kind of like the Loyal of the group. That was kind of where my mind went. Which, speaking of which, we haven't heard from Loyal in forever either.
Yeah,
I keep
100%.
going over Perrin and missing Perrin, but Loyal hadn't been around as long as Perrin hadn't been around. Anyway,
we'll get there.
Going back to Mistborn, I don't think TenSoon was as driven by the contract as he was by emotions. And I got to give that to Vin. Vin did a really good job of making TenSoon feel like one of the group. And then kind of saying, all right, I realize that he's not human, but he has feelings and emotions, and I need to address that. And that's really big growth on Vin's part, which gave her what I thought was going to be the most loyal of companions. And he was. I got to be fair to him. Like, even in the moment where it was discovered that the contract was what it was, Vin even said, I understand. You got to do what you got to do. And it was in that moment where he like broke completely. He was like, humans are not horrible. I need to help her any way I can. I'm going to remind her that she can control me. And it led to really the end of the book.
Right.
Like, that epiphany moment was the turning point for everything. If she hadn't done that, then Ruin would have won.
Yeah. And then I guess, what do you think about Kelsier? I mean, that devastated me in book one because I thought he was going to be like the main good guy. I mean, I knew it was Vin's story, but like at the same time, like Kelsier was just this character that was like so fun to root for. And then all of a sudden, he stands with Lord Ruler and just gets his head smacked off. And it's like,
that's the bigger issue is that you set me up to believe in Kelsier. Because from the I was like, oh, Kelsier's the greatest. You're like, yeah, Kelsier. And I'm like, yeah. And then we get to that part, and I'm like, they just Game of Thrones me. Like, I set the book. There's another moment where I set the book down or stopped listening. I had to hit pause, and I hit rewind because I was like, I misheard that. So I listened to it a second time, and I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
I was like, how is this going to work now? Like, he is the man. Like, he is the father figure. He's the jokester. He's he's got to keep going. He has got to persevere, and he's gone.
Yeah.
He was my favorite character.
Yeah.
Like, hands down, of course. I mean, he's like the male archetype that has all the confidence in the world, and so he of course is enduring in that way. And then in my mind, he's always has a grin on his face, and they say that about him.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit twisted, which I'm one of those type of people.
Yeah.
So, oh,
There
my
you go.
daughter's first dog is Kelsier.
That's awesome.
Oh, that poor dog.
So,
Please
because
don't be
Dana
decapitated.
brought it up earlier, I know we're bouncing around a lot, but what do you think about this aspect of plot points? That the altering of words, that nothing that was written was real. It can't be. You can't trust anything unless it's written in steel or metal.
When I read the end, well, even that, like, so when I read the end of,
World
first off, I was a
Ascension.
little disappointed in Says It
Okay.
because when he found the first steel tablet, he did the scratch out, but he didn't commit it to the mines quick enough.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or Ruin was literally changing it as he was
As it was being-
scratching it, and
Right.
he didn't think to double check. Like, what? That bothered me. That was one of those small little plot points where I was like, how did Sazed miss that? He
Right.
is so meticulous. How did he miss that? Other than the fact that he felt rushed. So I
Right.
think that is where Ruin maybe had his genius moment, because Sazed was in there doing his thing, and then all of a sudden, Marsh comes down and was like, "Hey, let's go."
Yeah.
So maybe that was it. I
Yeah.
want to give Sazed the benefit of the doubt.
And poor
But
Marsh. I mean, Marsh is poor Marsh. Marsh,
all the worst things, like, I lose the woman I love to my brother.
yeah,
I give up on ruling a people, my brother takes the people from me. I give up on my goal, my brother accomplishes my goal. I try to help my brother, I get stabbed 9 times by
I become Steel
spikes.
Inquisitor, and yeah,
Like, anything that could go, like Murphy's Law was like tripled
yeah,
for him.
poor Marsh.
Yeah.
Feel
I mean,
bad
the
for him.
end for Marsh was great. I mean,
Yeah,
he is the one that gave Vin her godship.
right.
And it was just in that brief moment where he's like, I will be the one. He ripped that earring out of her ear, and then the mist just, boom. We have our vessel now. Let's do this. So Marsh serves his purpose, but
yeah, and I thought it was interesting. You asked me at one point, "Is like, why are the mists bad?" And I was like, "Read and find out." It's like they're not. But
in my mind, like it. So it started making sense as I was reading the last book why the mist completely avoided her or didn't see her, because she had the earring in.
Mm-hmm.
And that became apparent to me. So then I was like, well, maybe the mists aren't bad. There's got to be something more to it. And then being a math person, and I'm not like the biggest math nerd, but when they started talking about statistics and they started talking about the anomaly of 16, and I was like, okay, that doesn't make sense. So what is the mist doing? Genius. Again, I can't use the word enough. Sanderson did a hell of a job writing this book, because preservation did what it could do, and it was snapping people, creating mistings and mistborns, but nobody ever thought to just like, okay, maybe there's a purpose behind this. Let's down some vials. Like, L got to that point way, way, way late at the right time, I guess, but
sure.
Had they figured this out sooner, they could have ended this sooner, but
true. Been a lot shorter books.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on, like, I guess the future? Obviously, I don't. Have you started Era 2 yet? Or
nope. I wanted to get through this first before I started the next era, because I didn't want to spoil myself, and I figured you would ask that question.
So yeah.
I had no idea.
So I know I've cheated you a little bit and said this takes place a couple hundred years later. It's not necessarily right afterwards.
No, and that doesn't, like, that did nothing to me, but I think he ended the book so well that you don't have to write another book after that. Like, you could write like the history of Sazed, the god, and talk about him learning his powers and then changing the world more. Like that right there was my only thought. So to think that there's going to be an era 2 and an era 3 of Mistborn, I'm like, does Sazed talked about how ruin and preservation were actually the same power. They were, you know, two sides of the same coin, and somehow they were split asunder. And he was going to try to figure out how or why.
Right.
So does that mean Sazed dies, or the powers divide out again somehow? Like, that's kind of where my mind went. And then does Ruin try again to come back into the world? And for what purpose? Like, other than wanting to kill, because that's what Ruin does, and to fulfill the contract that he had with Preservation, which, you know, Preservation, I have to say this because he wasn't very fair. He had a contract. All of humanity should have died. The world should have ended. And they could have started over again. And maybe that happens. Maybe, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That definitely does not happen, because I did get ruined a little bit on that. But so I don't know where he's going to go with it. And I think that's what intrigues me more. And then the fact that the different worlds within this universe are all happening kind of at the same time. I'm like, so are there different gods for the different worlds, or is Ruin and Preservation where they can't be everywhere because they were focused on what I'm calling Earth? I don't think I ever got a name for the world, but I'm assuming it's Earth with the description. You know, I don't think they ever gave me a name of the planet.
Scadrial is the name of the planet.
And that's something I probably wouldn't know unless I read other things.
Yeah, I think it's in The Secret History, which is like a novella that I have not finished reading yet. But that's the name of that. You know,
yeah. So I do know. I looked at the titles, and of course, it's more of an industrial. So I know there's going to be, you know, a little bit more modernization in this one. Again, I feel like there are more metals for them to discover, so there's going to be something to do with those metals. I mean, what those metals do is what I really want to know, because of Sazed's statement in the epilogue, which he is talking to my man Spook, who, like, yay, Spook finally came out on top. I felt so the one character I felt the worst for was Spook, because I was like, they always put him off to the side, like he is not necessary. And then Spook becomes the man in book 3, and he's the one that really helps save the Spook and Marsh, the two people that were like abused the most, play the biggest parts.
Sure.
So I feel like he told Spook, like, go discover. At first, I didn't think he was going to add Allomancy back,
right?
Because he talked about fixing humans, because humans were their anatomy and physiology were changed so they could breathe the air that was full of the ash and soot. And you know, the burning of metals was something that was changed in man. So I thought he was going to change man back entirely and take away all powers. But the fact that he says it left that was pretty cool, and it sets you up for the opportunity to have more eras.
Yeah.
But then he's like, go find the other metals. They're interesting. I'm like, what do they do? What do the other metals do? What are the other metals?
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, I guess it's been hinted to. I mean, so there's 8 metals that we know about, at least in the beginning of the book. It's hinted that there's 16 total, because the 16 number obviously keeps coming back around. It's a big number that Brandon Sanderson likes to run with, and yeah. So, and I know Daniel Lou just put, you know, ruin and preservation are shards. So if you read Stormlight, you'll figure out more of that. But Serapho. figure out what that means.
What's worse is that I have to keep coming back and asking you, what do I read next? Because he has so many books. So I'm like, where do I go next? What do I read next? What's gonna spoil something over here? What's gonna
they don't
elaborate
spoil
on
each
something
other
over
at all.
there?
He is meticulous about that. Like each individual story does not spoil the other. Obviously the series does. You can't go read the third book of Mistborn without reading the first one, but you can read the next Mistborn Era 2 or Stormlight, and it won't spoil each other at all. There's going to be hints and breadcrumbs that float back to the other ones, but nothing plot wise that spoils anything.
So here's a question: is there stuff in this book that would allude to things in Stormlight?
Yes.
Wow. Was he
very,
writing
very
side by
vaguely.
side, or like did he just like go back and say, I think I'm gonna pull this out?
Yeah,
of here?
well, no, I guess he talked about an interview that I actually listened. I guess there's an interview he did where he talks about like creating the Cosmere, and when he first had it, he didn't have an overall, big thing, but then he definitely Yeah, Dana Lou says I would read some of the standalones or Mistborn Era 2 next. The standalones would be like Warbreaker or Elantris or standalone Cosmere books that take place on other worlds, but they're not series. They're just standalone stories on different worlds. But I mean, probably Era 2. Yeah, that's probably a good one just because Era 2 is about to end in November.
Yeah, I'm going to Era 2. Like,
and
that is what I'm starting next week.
And then Stormlight would be a fun one to read as well. Stormlight's a lot more. They're a lot longer books. They're kind of his masterpiece, if that's what you want to call it. Most people would say that. It's his big opus, it's Stormlight. Stormlight's gigantic and just goes into so much. But it's a lot bigger of a story. Which is pretty amazing because Mistborn's a pretty big story too. But
and he again straight up genius. I am so glad I dived into the book.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to switch gears a little bit, because we got some big news this week. I mean, Sanderson's on his podcast, sat down and talked to. I guess it was on someone else's The Shattering of was it Adonaliseum, which is the name of the channel that it was on. That's the channel that I have pulled up. That's not actually the channel that it came from. I think it was from Sanderson's own podcast. Sorry. Okay. Never mind. From Sanderson's own podcast, he talked about movie deals or TV deals, Hollywood. It did say movie or TV. We're not sure which one. We did find out that it's going to be extremely large budget. It's going to be Mistborn. And we don't know what medium it is, whether it's small screen or big screen. But as Sanderson said in the interview, he'd be shocked if they're not in production this time next year. And that was this week. Actually, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, he said that. So, so they're gearing up, getting ready to do a Mistborn adaptation. Now, whether they'll start at Era 1 or Era 2 or where they'll go, who knows? But it's always fun to speculate like on an adaptation. And it's one thing that I always thought about, like when reading the books, like what would be the good hook? I mean, because you have in the books, the hook in the book, the very beginning of the book is Kelsier going and raiding that the Lord's manor.
Yeah.
And that works for the book, but I've always argued, and you might disagree with me, that a better cold opening, or not cold open, but a better opening would be where Kelsier goes and steals the ATM from the Venture keep. And it's one of the it's very early on, but it's definitely what hooked me is that action sequence, because in the first book, the first part, it wasn't as
Survivor.
I just felt like the action wasn't as well fine-tuned as it was in that second part where he goes and steals the ATM and uses it slides in, pulls the thing out,
first
flies
part,
out.
I'm gonna be honest with you. When I listened to the first part, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy this.
Yeah.
Like everybody says it's great, but I don't know if I like this. Yeah. But by the time I got there, it was like, I was hooked.
Okay.
So I think I agree with you. I think the second, or I would say, I think the second part is going to be where they go. So my thought is,
So Era 1. So it is Era 1, and Brando has
it is
talked about
Era
he's
1.
going to be writing, and Brandon Sanderson's going to be writing some of the screenplay for himself. So
Up until literally 2 hours ago, I was like, they've got to do a movie. And I said that because I need to see this action the way it's described in the book as best they can. And after watching The Wheel of Time, though I thoroughly enjoyed it, I was like, they could have done a little better. And
yeah, there's some improvements. Yeah, they could have made.
Yeah. But then I thought maybe it's because it's a television show and they've got to cut costs somewhere. But if it's a movie, but then I watched Sandman. I'm like, if they can do this in Sandman,
yeah,
then's world can come to life.
Yeah.
So I really honestly think what we need is like, and bear with me, we're going to have Lord of the Rings end of August through October. Then we're going to have, because Game of Thrones is going to be done by the time this happens. But we'll have Wheel of Time taking us from October through November, December. And then we're going to have Mistborn carrying us into the new year. And that's how my fall winter season is going to go. Like, that's what I need, so I'm not depressed because my vitamin D levels are down. I just need to use those to like re-energize me. So I think we have a plan here. If everybody's listening, that's what we need to make happen. Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time, Mistborn, and just let it run like that. And then Carnival Row and stuff like that can happen in the new year, every year.
Yeah. And I mean, even like, I know it's talking about doing, live action, but I've in anime and stuff like that, it's so hard to do. And Brandon has actually not joked, but seriously talked about like he wouldn't mind his stuff being done that way as well, animated, because you can do a lot more with it. If you've ever seen Arcane, League of Legends on Netflix, a way to do animation really well.
Yeah.
That's,
I mean, I'm a huge fan of anime, so I definitely would sit back and wait for each episode to drop, or I would binge watch 100% Mistborn in an animated series. I am actually like anxiously awaiting the animated series that's happening for Game of Thrones, which I think came out already, or I lost track because I got so into this book, and then I'm doing a couple other things, reading some nonfiction books and trying to broaden my horizons in that way. And then also I got distracted today from my research because we met our new kitten, Lily.
Oh,
I'm going to send pictures in the Discord of the new kitten.
Okay. Good.
So like I got a little distracted there, but I would definitely sit back and watch animated versions. And I know many adults that prefer that over everything else because you can get 20-minute hits and then keep it moving. You can watch that during your lunch break and thoroughly enjoy it, and then they can break up the books really well, do it a couple chapters at a time or something, because there's a lot. I don't know.
You don't have the big CGI budget and things like that. They definitely can. But people like live action too. It's a tough thing to sell.
I want to see this live action, and I want to see Cytonic. I know it's young adult, but I would, and that's, I think it's written more for a cartoon animated version. I think I do want to see Mistborn live action, but I'll watch it animated. But I want to see Cytonic.
Yeah, so Jake's definitely animated over live action. Well, yeah, you can just do so much more with animation.
I mean, how are you gonna make like horseshoe pulls happen in live action? Like, that's my biggest. I want to see horseshoe pulls. I want to see like the coin thrown in the like. I keep thinking Super Saiyan in my mind. Like, I want to see. Yeah, I want to see the things like that. The video game you just showed me is pretty dope. Like, I want to see these things happen. So,
yeah, And yeah, it'd be interesting. And then it's hard to like CGI wise to have like Stacey grow to this gigantic thing to like
Yeah.
and inflate his body
I
and
don't want to
deflate.
see the computerized stuff happening. Like with the
Yeah,
animation, it's just gonna happen.
right. Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely ways you can do it that way. It all depends on budget too. I mean, if you have a big enough budget, you can do whatever you
Well,
want.
that's what
But
I
it's
say. Then again, that first episode of Sandman, I don't know if the rest of the season's gonna be good the way
yeah,
the first episode was.
it was
But the
good.
things they did there makes me
Yeah,
believe that they can do Mistborn really well. And I'm not saying that's going to be a Netflix production or anything, but if Netflix can do that with Sandman, then somebody like
sure.
Prime can do something a lot bigger with a good
Right.
budget.
Yeah. I mean, so who knows who's going to pick it up? He hasn't hinted to who it was. I know they. I don't know if it's been announced.
Well,
If
that's
it's
going to
stream
be my.
service or if it's
I'm telling you right now, it's going to be Amazon Prime. I mean, they already have Wheel of Time. They might as well go ahead and snatch this one too.
Lord of the Rings too. They got that,
exactly.
yeah, they have those too. They're
And
trying
I
to
can
corner that
cancel
market.
all the rest of my subscriptions.
But you still have HBO out there that could pick it up. You have Netflix who's trying to get really to that space with
HBO
Shadow and
Shadow
and Sandman. Shadow and Bone
Bone.
and Sandman and so Netflix and Witcher. So I mean, Netflix is trying to get into that space as well. So it's there's definitely a fight for.
Not. I'm sorry. After season 8, and I will forever and for always say this, and I again, I'm not one of those people normally. The last 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, I never want HBO to touch unless they're going to do it right. And I also hear that Aragon's going to get a reboot.
Okay.
Like that's like we have a lot of really good fantasies going to screenplay. I am super excited. Like I'm finally in the world I'm supposed to be in. Now I'm waiting on a Harry Potter. Like if that happens, my life will be complete.
Yeah. So also another thing that was picked up. I don't know if you read it when you were younger or not, but Redwall.
No, never heard of it.
Redwall it's a children's fantasy book. It's about like animals that talk, like mice and rabbits and things like that. And there's Brian Jocks is the one who wrote it, but Netflix has picked it up. There hasn't been much more talk about than they bought the rights and that they're doing something. I don't know if it's been canceled or what's going on.
Interesting. Well, if it comes out, I'll definitely watch. If it looks good on screen, then I will definitely listen to and or read the books. So that is not one I've heard of before.
Yeah, so I mean that's books I read when I was a kid, and they're definitely for kids. But badgers, there are badgers in it. Apple has some serious production quality on their originals. I would hate it if they picked up Mistborn. Yeah, I mean there are some streaming services like that just haven't found their groove yet. They have the money, they just haven't found their groove. So who knows? I think Sanderson's going to be heavily involved in anything they do here. So anybody in chat right now? I mean, anybody have any questions for Chris about Mistborn or Era 1 or anything in particular that you guys loved about this particular era and wanted to ask questions about? Feel free to type them in chat. I'll throw them up on the screen here. And
Redwall has a little cartoon animation thing.
Okay, yeah.
I just Googled it. Like they have over 14 episodes.
Okay. That's not on Netflix yet, is it?
No, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
That started in 2021, actually. They've been all uploaded.
Okay. So I guess someone made a little animated thing about it. But yeah. But there's actually a more official Netflix thing is coming. Gotcha. Who was the best member of the crew and why was it Breeze?
So I read Dana's question at the same time that they came up. So to be fair, y'all know I like Ham. I hope by now you would know. Now, don't get me wrong. Breeze is.
You would pick a thug. You would pick a thug. You know what I mean?
Now, so okay, so when it comes to favorite character, that was a very hard thing just to even think about in general because they are like they're so well written and they're all so different. Now,
Mhm.
I'll be to be fair, I think Breeze and Ham are the two characters that speak most to me, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Ham, just because always the philosophical questions, never an answer. I see him as a big, like burly man, and
Pewter
that's
arm. I mean, he's yeah,
yeah, that I think I would be a pewter arm
yeah.
personally. But at the same time, I love somebody that can politic well
Hmm.
and somebody who can shape the emotions of others and use that to his advantage and do it in a good way. And
Sure.
Breeze definitely had, though he came off as a pompous jerk,
Yeah.
he had the best intentions the whole time. And I knew that about, like, it wasn't explicitly stated and his mind was not dove into as deeply in the first book and a half or so. But when they really started to go to his point of view, I was like, I already knew this. Like, I know enough about Breeze at that point to say that he's not going to do anything to harm people. So, you know,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
had to pick one,
Be
it
Ham.
would be Ham, just because I feel like he and I are soul, or like he's my character. I would that'd be
Not
it.
Spook. Not Spook. I'm gonna throw that in there.
I give Spook his props
What, what's
100%.
what's the saying?
And
Um,
it's really horrible. So I, in my mind, I started to assign colors to these people, and Spook was definitely a little black boy.
yeah.
Like I'm sorry, like that. I went there with it just because I'm like, well, who else would be talking slang, and who like I know we don't have any idea of race and ethnicity. That's not really a thing in this book, and I don't know if
Not
that's
this
his
book.
writing
No.
style, but in my mind, he became a black character.
Yeah.
I think that's just from all the literature that I've read. That's kind of how I viewed him. And the
Hmm.
underdog is always fun, but Spook, though he is phenomenal, and though I am so happy that the book ended the way it did for him happy, him whole, him as a freaking full-on Mistborn, like he
Hmm.
got everything he wanted. And of course, Kelsier was watching over him the whole time and made sure Sazed gave him that. Like, I was super excited for Spook, but Ham
Yeah.
got to be with his family. And if anybody knows me, wife, car, kids, dog, family, like those are my 5 goals in life. And that's
Yeah.
all Ham wanted, was to be able to return to his family and them not to be threatened by his return.
Yeah.
So I felt for that the whole series.
Yeah. So favorite overall characters. I mean, not just the crew, but back to Dana Lou's question. Favorite characters and
Lord
scenes.
Ruler.
The Lord Ruler.
The Lord Ruler. Like, I, his mind, the inner workings.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, he had an advantage because he touched the presence of God and he learned everything from it he could. But I would have to say the Lord Ruler is by far my favorite character, being, Rashik,
Hmm.
and then coming into and touching the power at the Well of Ascension, doing what he had to do to stop Ruin then 1,000 years back. Because
Right.
in my mind, Ruin was manipulating the original,
The deepness,
um
as they called it back then.
the deepness then. Yeah. So he was already manipulating the situation way back then.
Hmm.
Was it a Lindy that was going? Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
Lindy.
the fact that Rashik
Rashik
did
was the
what he had to
terraceman
do,
for yeah.
yeah, for Lindy, the fact that he did what he had to do, and I'm assuming a killing a Lindy. We don't really, that
Yeah,
was
I
kind
guess
of
so. Yeah.
vague, but that's my assumption. He killed him,
Mhm.
and he took the power and did what needed to be done with it. He used it so that he didn't free Ruin, and he didn't even understand what it was that he was doing.
Mhm.
Unlike
Right.
Vin, like Vin flat out just, of course we know now Ruin was controlling her so that that adds
Mhm.
that level. Would she have done what she had done
Right.
had ruin not been in her head? What would she?
Mhm.
Would she have healed? I don't know. But then the world wouldn't. We would have gone on a loop. There'd been
Right.
another 1,000 years of this
Right.
chaos. So, Lord
Yeah.
Ruler Rosic, like the what he did to prepare the world, creating
Mhm.
the big underground caverns with all the supplies they were going to need, making
Mhm.
sure they had pure water, making sure they had canned food, which, like, it almost made it feel like, and this is another thought I had, where was the world before this happened? Like,
Yeah.
technologically,
Right.
like, was it another Wheel of Time where they were super advanced, but there was also power, and then they got thrown back into the Dark Ages, or all the questions? But the fact that he used the hemalurgic spikes in his own body, the fact that he was both an allomancer and a ferrochemist, so
Mhm.
he was just like all out god. And the sliver of infinity
Right.
is a great way of saying it. He did everything to set them up in a way
Right.
to defeat ruin. And I love how Sanderson set it up where we just were absolutely against him.
Right.
And then slowly over the next two books, it's like he was a genius.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um. So you said you'd be a pewter arm. So I guess my next question was going to be if you could pick on any Allomantic power, what would it be? Dana Lewis said she'd want to be a coin shot.
Now,
Uh,
well, let me be honest. I'm going to be 100. And this is where I'm going to go back into the comments. Skeeter, I would actually want to have Breeze's power.
just
Like, I'm not
the
gonna lie
manipulation.
to
Yeah.
you. I would like to be able to manipulate, because you can make people do so much.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the way, Spook, go get me some wine. Spook already had the wine in his hand before he realized what he was doing, because it's not like it was already in Spook's nature. So he's just like pushing on the nature of other people. We know a
Hmm.
coin shot's nature is to push. So if I need a coin shot to do what I need him to do, it's already in his
Yeah.
nature to do it. I'm just going to influence him to do it.
Right.
You want to push that coin over there and get rid of that person for me. Go on and
Yeah.
do it. Yeah. And I was that kid. And in high school and middle school, I never got into a fight.
Yeah.
But I promise you, there were a number of fights that happened because of
Instigation.
actions that I may or may not have said or done to influence others in ways that may or may not have been right.
There you go.
Dana, you're absolutely right. I would have so much fun. That's the other issue. I'm like, morally, I'd be like, should I be doing this? And then there'd be the little guy over here like, hey, it'd be ruined at that point. Hey, you want to. And I would do it. I would have fun. That's
Yeah.
horrible, but I would.
Pushing. You have
Yeah,
writers, soother. So soother would be your thing.
correct.
And then of course smokers and seekers are the another one as well. Which of course outside of the Mistborn world really are useless powers.
Exactly.
Uh, in the Mistborn world they make sense, but you could actually use soothing and rioting outside of the Mistborn world, and same with pushing and pulling, the coin shots
Yeah.
and of course Mistborn being able to use both, they can fly pretty much. So it's that's a pretty awesome.
It is like that. You're limited to, because the other thing that Breeze realized is the better he got at his skill, the less metal he had to burn. And it got to a point to where his reputation was so great, people didn't know whether or not they were being coaxed or not.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of
Yep.
did what he suggested.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best part about his power. Once the reputation's there, people are just going to naturally do what you want them to do because it gives them the excuse.
Yeah.
And that's probably the worst thing about dictators in the world, is once you give people the excuse to follow you and you can
Mm-hmm.
do things in their name,
Yeah.
then you're going to do either really great or really horrible things. And I would like to say I would do great things with my power, but we would have to see.
I hear you. So yeah, any other thoughts or anything else? His favorite scenes from, we talked about characters, favorite scenes from the books.
I mean, the scenes that made me pause. Kelsier
Yeah.
being decapitated.
Yep.
That scene just like flat out stunned me. There's no other way of putting it.
What about the scene when Ellen's
Being
gives a speech and all of a sudden gets turned on, and I think that's book 2.
Vin being, beaten when she was younger, like that's like, good Lord. Like, so there were moments like that that really like made me pause. The Lord Ruler being killed and then the warning he gave, like that stuck with me right away. I was like, that has huge significance. We really messed up. That was the first moment where I thought maybe the Lord Ruler isn't as jacked up as we thought he was.
Yeah.
But I think the scene that really was my favorite scene, it was probably the worst scene, was when Vin went on her killing spree. Because we finally saw the real power of a Mistborn, the dagger kind of released.
Yeah.
And mind you, she, again, being manipulated not only by Ruin, but by Zane. Yeah. I really thought she was going to like take off with Zane for a long time there. I was like, we need 4 books.
Yeah.
Because like there's a missing book because there has to be her going with Zane and doing things she shouldn't do with Zane and then coming back to Ellen. Like that was solid in my mind for a very long time.
Yeah.
And Sanderson surprised me and wrapped that up really nicely too. So, but
yeah,
that was my favorite scene because she really was able to let loose and then realize at that moment, this is not what I want to be. And then she kind of came to terms with herself.
What about the bait and switch when the big reveal of TenSoon? When you find out that
again, I think I clumped that whole thing together in my mind, but that bait and switch was probably
because of the who done it, like who killed the person, like it was a whole
that that was probably number 2 scene.
Yeah,
it was that one because it just never dawned on me that TenSoon would be TenSoon. Even he was so short, like he was. There's no TenSoon at all, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not him. I'm him. I'm like,
what?
But I had so many of those moments in this series. Like that's probably the crazier thing. I had so many moments where I had to pause and go, damn, he's a great writer.
Yeah. Like when did this happen? And you get to go back and think about it, like how long did this happen ago? Like and how much has been done.
When did they have the time to do it?
Yeah.
Because not only did he like kill him, he had to extract information from him. And I feel like a Khandra would withhold information a lot better than a human.
Yeah. But TenSoon is one of the best at doing that. And then also, of course, you learn a whole lot in the 3rd book about the whole Khandra structure and the ancient ones and the first generations and the second generations, and you find out
they were both second gen, so like I know that doesn't equate.
The first gens never saw you see them eventually, but they just sit up in their balconies and
Jabba the Hutt style.
Yeah, and to do much.
Nope.
But yeah, but those were all of the Lord Rule's people as well. The first gen, of course, and then the Khandra.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting, fun books. I really thoroughly, and that was my introduction into Sanderson's world was Mistborn. So it still is first thing I read, and then I went and did Stormlight next, but I did Era 2 early this year, so which is like I said, a whole lot of fun. So it's not the same as the big implications. Well, there is, but it's not the same as Era 1 where it's huge implications, but it's fun. and the characters you just love so much from Era 2. They
In
are
my mind, like the whole situation of God is situated, and they're probably not even focused on God in Era 2, but more
yeah,
focused on, like I said, industrial revolution. Like they're just focused
right,
on man being the best it can be. That's kind of my thought.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, yeah.
we
Well, Rafa.
should.
It's and like I said, the last book, which I guess they have a title for it now. It's called The Lost Metal. Comes out in November. So uh,
Now they're not
so
going to add more to the 16, are they?
I don't think so. I'm Brandon. Who knows? But
Okay.
I think that 16 is one of those numbers that Branson loves to keep to.
By the way, I need to say this. I knew the Lord Ruler was a terraceman when we saw him young and then old. I was like, where else do we have this happening?
Oh yeah,
He's storing.
yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah. By using Allomantic and Ferrochemy together to
And
basically make himself immortal.
I don't know if you remember, I asked you at one point about the Khandra, and I was like, maybe he could be a Khandra switching bodies. But now we kind of know Khandra and Terraceman are similar in the fact that well, Khandra was made from Terraceman, and so
sure, yeah,
I made that connection. But as soon as when I saw him old and then young and then old and then back and forth, I was like, he's a alchemist, but how is he using allomancy? Of course, I was answered, but
yeah,
he was the anomaly.
Definitely. So yeah. Well, we're now going almost an hour and a half. I think we've talked about Mistborn a lot. I mean, anything else? Any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to add? Or if anybody has any more questions,
there's any more questions, let me know. I'm excited for Era 2 and to discuss that later on. I think that is definitely something to look forward to in the coming months. I've got, like I said, I'm working through some nonfiction, which is the worst thing for me. Well, it depends. I'm reading some books on science and diet, and nutritional science really intrigues me.
Cool.
And so I'll be plugging a little bit of Era 2 in between that. And then, of course, the wedding is in 77 days.
Yeah, it's getting close.
Yeah. So, but, hopefully I'll be done with Era 2 sooner rather than later. I want to get done with it before the next one comes out. So maybe that'll be a Christmas gift. Maybe I'll actually get some hardcover books in here.
Yeah. Well, Skeeter, it's never too late to do a reread.
No, it is never too late.
As Chris has said, he never rereads books, but I think we're going to turn him into a rereader after reading through all these things.
Yeah, Wheel of Time has already made me go back a few times, and now Mistborn, when I get into Era 2, and when I get into Stormlight, I'm going to be looking for the breadcrumbs now.
Yeah.
And I think my commitment will be, if Alan can commit to it, is for Era 2, we'll go book to book.
Okay. We can do that.
So that way we can, I love to connect a little bit more.
And they're shorter books than Era 1. The Era 2 books. Stormlight, no. Those books are thick. I mean, those are
Stormlight broken down the same way as Mistborn was, where there's parts, part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, yeah. There are parts, and they are very, very thick books. And the one thing I will say, if you finally do get into Stormlight, I do have to say that the first, 300 pages before the story starts, it's a lot of world building in the beginning. It's tough.
You said first 300 pages before the story starts?
Really starts, yeah. It's all world building. It's good, but really, there's a particular chapter I always say, if you make it to that chapter, you're hooked. But before that chapter, it's what am I reading? And there's a bunch of jokes about it, where it's you read the prologue, you're like, okay, so I get the plot of the story. No, that's not the plot of the story. And you're like, okay, well, this is the main character. No, and then you read the first chapter, okay, now this is the main. No, that's not the main character. Okay, and then you go, oh, this is definitely the main. No. We haven't even started the story yet. So we're gonna get there.
So I guess my thing will be when I start Stormlight, we'll do the prologue and then we'll do the different parts.
Yeah, each Starlight book is a big fat ass trilogy.
Each
Yes,
book is a big okay.
Yeah, they're gigantic books. But they're so good. There's 4 of them now. The 5th one hopefully comes out next year, and that's going to be the end of the. There's going to be 10 books total in Stormlight. Barry said, and they're broken up 5-5. So like kind of like Era 1, Era 2. I'm not sure if there's going to be a gap between. I think he said there's going to be a gap between the first 5 and the second 5. So there's going to be some kind of conclusion with the next book as far as the overall story that's happening now, and then there'll be another. There, kind of like an Era 2 for the next 5 Stormlight books, and then I think there's going to be 3 or 4 Eras in Mistborn. Who knows if he's going to expand on the other worlds? It's going to be crazy by the time it's all over with. And Branson's still young.
He have his own channel.
Yeah,
like he can have his own streaming service at this point.
Yeah, and Brandon is still young. I mean, he's 46 years old, so he's.
I can imagine him wanting to retire at 60, though. He's probably going to write these last few, and then
I don't think he'll ever retire. The guy loves to write. I mean, you read interviews with him. He's just like my thing is like he loves telling stories. And he joked around. He did a whole entire joke YouTube video when he 4 full novels in secret over COVID. Because he's like, yeah, I had a lot of downtime because of COVID. I wasn't allowed to travel, and if you give me downtime, I tell stories. That's what I did. so I mean, that's just it's insane. Like, there's been other writers that have joked around about like he's released his daily schedule and how he writes, and it's like the most insane thing in the entire world. Like, so he sleeps, I think, from 3 a.m. till noon is his sleeping time.
Wow.
And then he wakes up and writes from noon till like around dinner time. He breaks and has family time till his kids go to bed. And then like around 9-10, he writes until like around midnight, 1 a.m. And then he plays video games for the last 2 hours to wind down and goes to sleep and repeats every single day. And that's just his.
So that's I see my kids and they go home from school for 2 hours, put them to bed, and then I'm back on this writing gig.
Yeah, he wrote 5 extra novels during COVID. Yeah, he'll never stop writing. He just, as long as he's living, he's going to be writing.
How old are his kids? And do they write?
I think his kids are kids. I don't think they're that old. They might be like high school age now, but yeah, I mean, he has it's 3 children. I'm not sure how old they are. But yeah, I mean, he like I said, he's a writing machine. He also teaches at BYU in Utah.
Oh wow, he's busy.
Teaches writing classes, and usually all of his writing classes he live streams and puts them on YouTube, so you can like go and read his or watch his actually writing courses.
That's cool.
Yeah, so pretty interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
Guy. So let's see. I can't see. It doesn't say anything about his kids. I don't know how his kids are.
No, yeah.
But yeah. So more interested, and yeah, we'll keep on doing this. So as Chris keeps on moving through the Cosmere, hopefully he doesn't catch up to me and I can stay ahead. So otherwise, Chris will be hosting me as we go through some of these things. But
that would be interesting. Just
I still need to do. I only have 2 more books: Warbreaker and Elantris, and Arcanium Unbounded, which I'm reading right now. So that will be done.
We'll have Dana and Jake,
which I'll take and I'll end up taking a break from whatever I'm reading when the next Mistborn comes out in November, because I will definitely be reading that right away. So thanks everybody for watching us live. Like I said, we'll continue doing these things, and make sure, like, if you guys have questions, go to our Discord. We have a whole section on Cosmere. You have to click the role Cosmere Knots. And then once you have the role, it opens up our whole Sanderson section. And because I don't want to clutter it if you're not into Sanderson and have all these extra channels. But there's sections there where you can maybe just write stuff if you have questions for Chris. Going into, I guess you've picked Era 2. You're going into next, right? So
Yes.
Alloy of Law's gonna be the next one. So if you guys have questions for Chris about Era 2, once he's done with that, we'll do another one of these little live streams and continue doing this. But it's been a lot of fun. So thanks for taking some Saturday night time with me. I always enjoy talking about Cosmere because it's one of I told Chris I love Wheel of Time, but once I found Sanderson, Wheel of Time introduced me to Sanderson. Obviously, he finished the last 3 books of Wheel of Time, which I'm very thankful they picked him to do it because he can write.
Yes, clearly.
And then after getting into the Cosmere stuff, it just I absolutely am infatuated with that. So, anyways, until next time, guys. So,
peace. Yeah, it's so weird not having Ian.